We are Denver. This is Illfoominati with your host, Ryan Fu. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the aforementioned host, Ryan Fu. I am joined today by two very beautiful human beings in the town of Denver, Colorado. It's a gorgeous place. It's a gorgeous day. Over here we got Samson, like we normally do.
Hello.
And we have Sakile Lowman on today.
Hello.
How's it going, Sakile?
It's going great.
Yeah?
Yes, I'm happy to be alive, and it's Sunday, so we're chilling.
Well, we're happy to have you on. I'm always psyched to have Samson on because he's a brilliant, witty individual. And right now, I'm just full of so much joy and enthusiasm for the WeAreDenver project. I'm just really happy with all the beautiful creatives, like Rich back in the studio, like Miles over here at the computer, like Nick G, who did the podcast before us, coming together and really making something. So thank you both so much for being here and being a part of that process.
Word up.
Yeah. So let's start light and just talk about how our days have been and perhaps even our weekends. How was your weekend, Samson?
Excellent. A good friend, beautiful love interest of mine has been hanging out, so I could spend the day with her yesterday.
Nice.
Yeah.
And what'd you guys do?
We spent like 2 or 3 hours at Herbs and Arts. It's Herbs and Arts, right?
Yeah, I love Herbs and Arts.
Yeah,
I'm a hippie, though. So.
I got weird. That was probably the longest I've ever spent despite my like hippie.
In like any spiritual
base.
shop?
Yeah, for the most part.
Why do you think you don't spend much time in spiritual shops?
Well, outside of the book section, I don't resonate with it very much at this point.
Like just, crystals.
Yeah,
and
just like
tinctures
I can't talk to crystals, and like I've never done any real deep look into aromatherapy or anything. Not that I have anything against it. It's just like I haven't been there, so
yeah,
I'm walking into an unknown.
Yeah,
and I tend to like want to research before I walk into.
Yeah, it's sort of like walking into a Buddhist temple with all the chanting, and you don't know what's going on.
I've got a rock hanging on me now.
Yeah, I was gonna say these crystals. That's like important.
So, how about you, Sakile? Do you like spiritual shops and whatnot?
Yeah. Well, I was pretty much raised at Herbs and Arts, so I love crystals. I love the candles and everything. Because even if you don't like know for a fact, that like those things have power or anything like that, like you just want to be able to focus your intention. I think like when you have a crystal that says like this is for love, then you can focus that energy into that for yourself.
The intention is very clear as to whether. So this is a good place to find ourselves at the beginning of the podcast, because one of the things I want to talk about is, Sakile, you're, would you say, a pretty self-defined spiritual person? Or interested in spirituality, interested in some of those works?
Definitely.
Samson, would you claim the same identity?
Oh yeah, I'm all about magic.
All about magic. But, like we said at the beginning, there are these gaps, right, of experience and of maybe context that allow folks to access certain things differently. So I was at Herbs and Arts a little while ago and bought a little thing of lavender oil. And to me, that's absolute magic. Not just because it smells nice and pretty and I don't stink as much, but also because lavender oil is a natural inflammatory, natural antibacterial agent. So it's like a little medic kit. It can do a lot of different things. It's also bug repellent. It's lots of different stuff. So to me, that's magic. But not everybody would see it that way. They'd see it as science. So one of the things I'm interested in talking about is, let's start with crystals. A good place to find a middle ground. So let's paint both sides of it, right? Because you both probably know folks who think crystals are silly, or that folks who carry them around are sort of weird, crazy, believe that the stones have magical powers that, grant them instantly some great phenomenon. But I would contend that anyone who's really into it doesn't actually believe that. So, Samson, as somebody who's not super familiar with the crystal world, right, what do you think people use crystals for?
Well, I'm not familiar, especially these days. I've been listening to massive amounts of information in my ears all day. So, I want you to tell the story of your broken crystal, by the way.
Oh, right.
Good. But yeah, so we'll get to that. But I think they're supposed to take hits for you. That's the big one. Or store knowledge. Those are the two big ones. They're also kind of like... they're kind of more of a base form of consciousness too. There's an interface there, like there's an intelligence behind it. But anyway, I'm just reporting on what I've heard. I've not experienced that firsthand.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I've definitely heard people say like they talk to rocks and rock talk back to them, but to me that's a greater metaphor for something actually in the middle. To reference what Samson was just talking about, on the way here to the podcast today, I saw 2 police officers hit each other with their cars. I'm sorry if I'm laughing at that. That's funny to me. It's funny to me. Because there are people who are supposed to be enforcing laws and also preventing violence, but they were caused violence upon each other and both broke a law. So that was what was funny to me. They both like ran through a red stoplight at the same time and totally clipped each other. Anyway, I almost got into that accident. I would have gotten hit by both of the cop cars moving. It's kind of hard to describe. But today, I got here with these 3 little crystals that I normally don't carry, and one of them just broke right in half. So one of the old stories about crystals, right, is that you should carry an altar with you because the altar will take bullets for you. It'll take some of the energy, some of the damage will go there instead of to you. Now, if you're listening to that and that sounds super crazy to you, hold on a second and suspend your disbelief, because I think there are other reasons to really consider that as a legitimate phenomenon. One of them being that your intention has a lot to do with crystals. So, Sakile, talk to us a little bit about how you think intentions and crystals work together.
Right. I think actually the crystal thing was pretty vague to me. And crystals having consciousnesses and things like that until someone kind of stated that you have to think of the time that a crystal takes to form, and that, you know, when you're shopping for a crystal and it says, okay, rose quartz, this is for love, and when you hold it, you want to focus on love, and however you want to manifest that for yourself, you had to put that in your hand and you hold it and you think about it. I think even doing that exercise for yourself in your mind or out of your mouth is like the most important thing that you can do for yourself. So even if you don't believe that the crystal itself has the power, what it's doing is it's forcing you to put yourself in a place of asking for what you want in your life and for yourself, and being present with what you want as an individual that we actually don't spend very much time focusing on in a really meaningful way, you know?
It sort of gives you permission to really
and it makes you be introspective as opposed to thinking, I want these external things, I want, you know, whatever you're pursuing in your day-to-day life.
Right.
It's actually asking you for to be conscious of your own individual desires.
See, so that's the real crux of spirituality to me. Because I think there are folks out there, and tell me if you guys agree or disagree, that really believe if they buy a rose quartz crystal for love, that next week the perfect man or woman should walk into their life. But do you think that's the case? Do you think crystals have magic powers in this way?
I think they amplify your intention. So it depends. So this person's saying, you know, like the decision when you're saying, I want love to come into my life and I'm asking for love to come into my life is very different from like, I expect love to come into
from
my
this
life.
crystal.
So you can go out into the world as you experience it and say, you know, like, you can even like, I'm expecting it, but it would be, big-headed of me to expect it tomorrow.
Yeah. Right.
So like, it's not going to come if you don't ask for it. And the crystal will theoretically amplify the effect or speed it up, you know, but
the crystal's not giving you love.
Yeah.
Well, and if you're going into a situation being like, I'm going to buy this crystal because I want love, like, how much do you want love? Like, if that's like
the way
the amount of work that you're willing to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what do I need
to cop out?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So I think that is a great, tiny microcosmic metaphor for the current plague of pseudo-spirituality in our country. I just came back from Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I don't mean to talk shit about New Mexico, but I'm about to. I met a lot of folks selling Native American art and jewelry. Didn't meet a lot of Native American folks selling Native American art and jewelry.
Did you walk the street? Because that seemed...
I mean, yeah.
All the blankets, you know, like those people, sorry to be like stereotypical, but like they seemed much more indigenous than any like... I mean, there's definitely a ton of shops.
Yeah. But generally, like, the overall consciousness seems more tapped into, and it's not just indigenous iconography. There's, like, I would say almost every garden I saw had a Buddha head in it.
Yeah.
Or what's the lady?
You're right.
The Taoist lady, goddess chick. Anyway,
Queen Yang?
Yeah. So there's lots of that, and I wondered, like, the thing that came to me was, how many Buddhist heads or Buddha heads in your garden bring you to enlightenment.
Right. Right.
You know? And is it really that people think that putting a stone Buddha head in your garden makes you more Zen? Or is that an expression of them being really into Buddhism, for example, right? It could be either. So this is where spirituality as a tool itself seems to have this phenomenon where if you use it for something like it's food, you think, I'm consuming this, it's going to have this effect on me.
Right.
But you don't think about why you're consuming it. Then you've sort of missed the whole point of spirituality. That's my opinion.
I think it's exactly like food in the way that we interact with food. And like, you know, I'm so incredibly inspired by our beautiful friend Eutimia, and just to eat healthy and to feed yourself with food that sustains yourself. And it's actually just like spirituality in the sense that you want to practice consuming things that are good for you. And that is in your food, that's in your mind, that's like why we read, and that's why we like exercise our judgment and our reason, is so that we can actually grow. But I think the important thing, I had a very special experience in Santa Fe, New Mexico, because I grew up going to a reservation there for the Tewa Native Americans. And I think that people actually had to recognize that spirituality takes time. And it's not like what you said, you can't just like ask for a crystal to give you love, or you can't ask for this Buddha head to give you enlightenment. You really have to go and you have to spend time with people who have something that you don't have. And that spirituality, there are people who have that. Yeah. That's what I experienced on the reservation. That's what I've experienced in a number of experiences. Yeah. You have to really spend that time.
Well, it's pretty clear. You meet folks who are A, happy, and B, who are really speaking from experience, and it becomes clear, like, oh, this isn't something I'm going to get intellectually. Right. This is something I have to work on as a being.
Holistically.
Holistically, in every part of my life. So whether it's food or crystals or video games or drugs, I think what people forget is that, and I'm not sure how to put this exactly, but it's something like what you consume has... The sustenance of what you consume is made up of a lot more of why you consume it than what it quote unquote actually is. So if you eat yogurt, right, and you're eating it because your body wants you to eat it and you feel like you could use a little more probiotics in your stomach, or you just are hungry for yogurt that day, which may all be the same thing, or you're eating it just because it tastes good, I think you get probably different nutritional benefits from that yogurt based on why you're eating it. Now, science may or may not disagree with that, but it does appear that why we do things has a huge impact on how or what we do.
There are scientific studies suggesting that praying over your food increases its nutritional value. And, science is just as questionable on either side of the aisle in that regard. Like there's plenty of repeatable experiments that can verify something that would be considered magic. Yeah. So, but they don't get publicized because most of those things are cost-saving measures, you know?
Right. Yes. Right. And they're not supporting capitalism. It's not supporting like the whole money-making scheme. But like what you said, like, talk to your plants, because they listen and they grow better when you interact with them in a beautiful way than in a negative way. And that is like scientific studies have proven.
So let's talk about that particular metaphor, because that's another great microcosm of people talk about speaking to their crystals, right? And their crystals talking to them. I'm not sure how many folks, when they say that, hear voices from their crystals. I don't think that's what they mean. Similarly, when people say talk to your plants, I think, and maybe this is just me, some people might have a more intimate relationship with them, but my understanding is, like, when you water plants, you can tell when a plant wants water or sunlight. It gets kind of droopy when it wants sunlight, and it gets kind of like dry when it needs water, or brown, or, all other kinds of things. That's communicating with the plant. Right. That's easily brushed over. People say, oh, that's just gardening. You're just paying attention. Right. No, you're communicating with something that's alive.
You're speaking its language, and that's what we don't want to move out of right now. Is like every language on this earth is not human language. So when you're communicating to your plant, it is like, I'm feeding you water. That's like talking to it, because that's the most important thing, like one of the 3 most important things to it, you know?
Yeah.
We have to actually, like, even when people talk about spirit animals and like things like that, and how like detached you can be from the concept of like these things actually being real, is like, it's not that hard to think it's not real when you're not thinking through the context of being a human being.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I'd say common across all the spiritual realms.
Yeah.
Well, let's step away from that. We jumped down that rabbit hole for a second, because I do want to talk about God and spirit and whatnot. But first, I want to talk about Sakile. So, Sakile, you're a writer, you're a creative, you're a musician. Tell me, what else do you do? What's your life like?
My life is very normal.
Very normal?
Very.
That can't be true.
It's so normal. Okay, I think I'm just kind of a product of the times right now. Like, constantly using my computer to learn things. That's like what we're all doing, I guess. But that's what I do. I struggle to keep my house clean. I struggle like, in the day-to-day things for sure. But I think my biggest thing that I've realized since like really being 23, I guess, a couple months ago, and even a little bit before that, is that like we had to be more productive, like producing real concrete things. And then also it's our responsibility as friends, as community members, as family to be checking on the things that your people are doing. Like these people who are your homies or your friends on Facebook or things like that. Like we actually have a responsibility to engage in what they're putting out.
If you care about it, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if that's your friend, and that's again, like the intention, whole like thing that you had to do in your mind where you decide like, is this person my friend? And if so, I can listen to their song. If so, I can be on their radio show. Like, you know, if so, I want to engage in all the products that they're putting out, all the intellectual matter that they're putting out, so that I can actually know who they are and not just like their photos on Facebook.
Yeah, I think that also defines us as a community.
Right.
You know, right now we're so disconnected.
Right.
Even with the aggregate connector of social media, there's still a step is missing, right?
Right.
And seeing someone's see what you're really seeing on social media isn't even that your friend.
No.
You're seeing what I would call the Black Mare's reflection of them.
Yeah.
It's who they present themselves as. It's their psyche. It's their ego. It's the image of who they want themselves to be, how they curate themselves, the pictures they don't like, they delete. The pictures they do like, they zoom up. They get captions. They get little emotional tirades. If they get angry at someone, they can delete the conversation.
Right.
So it's a well-curated black mirror is the word I like to use, because it's not like a regular mirror like this one reflects...
truth.
Well, it reflects what exists in reality.
Right.
The black mirror, the phone, the computer, the screen, reflects what you want it to reflect of your identity. Rather than that being a reflection of... what I'm seeing outside, the black mirror is a reflection of what I'm seeing inside.
And want is such an interesting word, because I think, like, it's beyond want at that point that you're editing your photos and you're doing the selfies and you're doing, like, I don't like this photo because I look fat or whatever. That's not even a desire. You're acting based off of your repressed insecurity that's like inside of your head, and you're projecting that onto everyone. I feel like, and
onto yourself.
Yeah, it's so much. You know, there was actually a beautiful example where I just remember one of my friends, she was so fresh, just looking so dope one day, and she was just going to school on campus, and I'm like, yo, like, I'm going to take a photograph of you because you look beautiful, and like, you're going to want this. Like, you don't recognize because this is normal for you, but you look nice and you want this photo, you know? And we had to be like that, as opposed to like just we're kind of like forcing each other to take pictures of ourselves and not interact. Like, we're just...
I like the concept that could be more communal. Yeah. That we could celebrate each other rather than us always celebrating ourselves.
Yeah, it has to be more
Look at this thing I did all day. I mean, I do it. I'm someone who, for business sake too, is, you know, using the phone and taking selfies and like, hey guys, I'm over here doing this thing. But as soon as you do that, The moment you choose to do that, you're not yourself anymore.
Right.
You're what you are trying to sell to other people.
Right.
Which for me personally isn't a big deal. It's not good or bad, but it is entirely unrecognized.
And backwards.
Yeah. Yeah, but you can do it if you think that what you're creating is you, it becomes a pretty crazy shitstorm.
Right, because it's not you.
It's not. So that's why, like, this is Ryan Fu 4.7. I work really hard on this one, and yeah. I do. I work really hard on Ryan, right. And so do a lot of other people.
Right.
But it's not me. I'm not this. I curate this.
Right.
I'm not the social media icon or the website thing. I'm the person who helps create that. And there's
right.
a team of people that aren't even Ryan either that right. work on that thing. But if I thought that I was that thing, think of all the various egoical and emotional issues you go through. Because if someone says, oh, Ryan Fu's not pretty, then I think, like, well, I'm not pretty. Instead right. of, well, how can I make Ryan Fu prettier?
Right.
You know? So identity does seem to have a lot to do with this whole phenomenon. And
that is actually exactly why I said what I said earlier about my name. Sakile, meaning we have built. Mm-hmm. It actually, that becoming 23 was like a big deal for me. I don't know why, but it felt different than other ages. And I think really realizing the meaning of my name is we have built. And it means that, like, Sakile does not exist without all of the things that I have interacted with. And I think, like, I mean, even my friends who know me probably interact with me on Facebook or things like that. And they're like, what is going on with this girl? Like, she's commenting on all of our photos. She's liking everything. She's loving everything and posting all types of stuff all the time. But I think it's important for us to recognize, actually, that my name is not just my name, but it's actually a social context. It's a philosophy, and it is that we have built something, and this is our responsibility to recognize that there's no really such thing as an individual other than the fact that you are that individual, and that every single interaction that an individual has shapes who that individual is. And I think I'm hyper conscious of it. So when I'm commenting, you know, on my old teacher's picture saying, you know, you really impacted my life. That thing that you taught me once literally shaped my movement from that moment on. Like the way that I interact with people changed because of that. The way that I put myself into situations that were beneficial for other situations that, you know, like, we had to recognize that it's actually not you that's doing anything. It's all of us really, really moving forward and helping each other.
I agree. So tell me, how does that collaboration affect your art?
Completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I let it be fluid. That's what we have to do. Like, I acknowledge that, you know, I just released a song called Oshun Konchango, named after the Yoruba Orishas, gods and goddesses. Mm-hmm. Oshun is love and Shango is power, and they manifest through the river and also through thunder. But I was heavily influenced by Ibeji and their whole movement to bring forward the Yoruba culture and to have this whole new idea of spirituality that is actually something that is universal. And even though we call it different names, most indigenous cultures have names for nature and things like that. And so being comfortable moving forward in that, I completely allowed them to influence me. I just, you know, you listen and you're like, this is the move, and we're making that. And artistically it's the same, and writing is the same. We're constantly, you know, we just have to be inspired by each other, and then we have to do what we can to put forward, and whatever we can do that's inspired by someone else will never be the same as what someone else has already done. So
so you're not boringly repeating what people have told you. You're a new mutation in this evolution of creative thought.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Because you have different experiences.
Yeah.
Than they do.
Yeah, and they didn't tell themselves to do it. Right. So you're the one who got their influence, and that's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard a kind of crazy thing the other day. I was talking to someone who worked with folks who claimed they could read minds. I think he hadn't dealt with anyone like that for like 2 or 3 years, but I won't say his name on air because I don't think he likes it. But he chatted with some folks, and one of his questions was, sort of philosophically, if you could hear someone else's thoughts, aren't they your thoughts? Like, how could you ever
know?
Hear someone else's thoughts, and how would you know they weren't yours?
We do it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, even if they are your thoughts, it doesn't change the unexplainable aspects of confirming that with the person verbally.
Right. So let's say you both, everyone right here, for some reason, was thinking about bread or something like that.
That's so weird.
Well done. If that were the case, right?
But I'm always thinking about bread. My God.
It's the most powerful drug in America, I feel like.
Butter. Bread.
Give me some wheat. Give me some corn.
That's my home base. So
yeah, dude, bread is good. If you don't think bread is a drug, you stop eating bread for a week and see if you'll crave
and try
it.
not to cry.
I can quit anytime. But sorry, we're off track.
But if we were all thinking about bread, you assume sort of backwards that you're hearing it in your own voice, right? But thoughts, I think, aren't quite so tangible.
Transparent, yeah.
Yeah, they're more of a feeling. They can manifest after that feeling as a series of logical assumptions you call thoughts, but ultimately are a sensation, experience. So none of us would know who's originated that thought.
Right.
And I think that's because we're all the same and blah, 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 spirituality, but that's not as important as it is to the fact that when you create with people, right, you don't sit down and say, like two musicians who are working together, and I've seen this a few times, there's some dialogue about it, but mostly there's very little thinking and planning. There's just this sort of doing, this co-creation where two people sit down and they resonate on a frequency and play and make mistakes and find cool things out, but it's not some full, truncated, well-understood story. So that's not how collaboration is going to work. If you could read someone's thoughts or whatever, I think maybe in a way, even just making eye contact with someone, feeling someone's body language is a form of reading their thoughts. It's the same phenomenon. So anyway, tell me, Sakile, since I want to learn more about you, what is your art form? What do you do? Because I know you're a writer.
Yeah.
I know you're a musician. So what's your music about? What's your writing about?
I think this goes back to reading people's thoughts, is that we actually can do it. And that, like, in effect, we're always doing that. Mm-hmm. That's what we're doing when you forge a friendship. Like, what you're trying to do is, like, get how they're processing this mutual experience that you're having with them, and also why they're processing it that way based on their life context. That's why you ask your friends questions. That's why you want to know, like, where they went to high school, and, like, you just want to get a context for what this person interacting with you is like. I think it's like, and not even that you want to know why somebody does it, but you want to know that somebody is consistent or does a specific thing, and that is like reading someone's mind. When you have a friend and you call your friend and you need to count on them for something, you call them because you know you can count on them, and that's like reading their mind. Yeah. You know that they're gonna not mess with you. Like, that's how trust happens, is actually because you can read somebody.
So do you collaborate with any other artist friends?
Yeah, totally. I'm with Dylan today.
Hi, Dylan.
Yeah.
He's doing something.
He is not listening.
So
but that, musically, that's like my go-to. And then artistically, it's actually, I moved into a home with an artist who actually I was very, very inspired by, because I see his art and I'm like, this is very great for the world. Like, the world needs to know. And actually, a lot of my personal projects had been put on the back burner, really, because I spent a lot of time just getting to know people and learning how to predict them and learning what kind of art they're trying to produce and what's the motivation behind that, and actually pretty much putting my life and my artistic person on hold to just learn and listen and observe what people are doing,
And it sounds like in that context also decide who you want Sakile to be, and how you want to produce your art. So what have you come to? What is the reason for you doing art?
Listen, if I had resources, I would be doing art all day.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's it.
I think a lot of people.
That's everyone, but that actually is like why we have to fund like art, anything, any creative anything, because you know, all of a sudden I had a social media presence from myself, not because people were liking my things or adding me or anything like that, but I started posting my song that I made in June and the book that I wrote in May.
I didn't know you wrote a book.
Yes,
That's awesome.
Yes, I wrote a book called Mayflowers, and I wrote it during the month of May, and I was just going through a lot of things in my life, and also being reflective about a lot of things in my life, and realizing that after putting my artistic person and self and creative self on hold, I kind of got to know who I was, got to know who everyone else was, and then decided to move forward. And once I made that decision to move forward, it was like, yeah, I can write a book. Like, that's simple. Like, you know.
Did you write it in 1 month?
Yeah, I wrote it.
How many pages?
It's 103 pages, and I wrote it in May, and I didn't edit it. So if you read it and you're like, these are typos, like, whatever.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I'm not sorry, because it actually was just for me to be able to make what I was experiencing in my mind into something that someone else could process. And that is like the most important thing that we can do, is like, when you're sad or you're depressed, when you're sad and depressed and you are struggling, or even when you're happy, you want to be able to document those moments. And I think it was very important for me to do that, because as people maybe read the book, they can feel that with me. And really, that's what's important, especially if someone's your friend.
So what's someone going to feel if they read your book? What might they feel?
Yeah, they're just going to feel me.
Ooh, art is self-expression.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, no, but actually, because that's why I put it out, and that's why it's so frustrating. And every artist knows that it's frustrating when you release something and people aren't registering like how monumental that is for you as an individual, and that because it's monumental for you as an individual, it's monumental for everyone as an individual, because everyone has the potential now to move forward and advocate for themselves or create art that expresses themselves, and we should just be loving that about each other, you know?
Yeah, the fact that humans are creative at all is a glorious thing that we should support. Without a doubt, it's responsible for every great medicine and technological innovation and good piece of art. But it seems to be pretty low on the totem pole in terms of what people think is important for society or government. Why do you think that is? What do you think, Samson? Why do we value art so little?
Well, I'll go kind of the conspiracy brain, because I was just thinking the last podcast during the Doodlecast, we were hanging out, chatting away, and we were talking about evolution, and creativity is the intentional evolution. It's the word we have for that, you know? So I think that the lesser forces of society, one of them being commerce, although it like rewards innovation, it rewards a very specific form of innovation, you know? Like, it doesn't reward innovation away from profit,
Right.
you know? So like in that sense of like the community aspects of, you know, interpersonal relations and things, like the things that reward the further creative process, the more the less expensive, you know, in a lot of ways the better ideas are not rewarded because of the whole system that exists around it.
Yeah, or the lack of that artist being willing to sell it for a certain amount,
or as it started, like having the time to do it.
Right. It is I think that is exactly everything. Like, I on Facebook for a second, my profile picture was taken from this lecture that I did for school, and it was the world of nature versus artifice. And it's like, when you think about creativity and population and just how we've grown as a species and evolution specifically, that's like natural, like evolving is natural. But what happens is you have this artificial thing like commerce and economy and those things that are systemic
invisible
things. Yeah, they're conceptual, and money is like kind of a concept that we use it and we accept it, but it is not nature.
It's an ideology, though.
Yeah, and actually what being creative threatens about that is that you're just fluid with everything. You know, if we had the opportunity to be creative, we would find solutions to things that make those things obsolete.
We'd
right?
find solutions to problems we've not even thought about yet.
Yeah, definitely. And problems that would never arise. Like,
because we would be creative.
Yeah, but it actually is, it's that human interaction, it's the interaction with nature and the importance of that makes our stance in time right now so important. I think it's why I continue to like post things about myself, post things about my culture, post things about my community and the people in the community specifically, and how inspired I've been by everyone, because we are so aware of nature. And I mean, the people that I've had the privilege of knowing and accepting into my life, and this whole nature concept is a very indigenous concept throughout the entire world, but it's the importance of creating things that don't harm our existence. Like at the end of the day, it's not healy-feely, like go hug a tree, like that whole artificial spirituality. It's actually like, okay, maybe solar panels is a real solution to a real problem, because we as a human race have to exist in a space and want the energy to do the things that we need to do.
In a certain kind of harmony with the stuff that's happening.
It's symbiosis. That's nature.
Harvesting that which is around us for you know, good and return, you know, like.
I mean, I think there's no better metaphor for that than farming.
Right.
Yeah, it's my opinion that humans are gardeners by their nature.
Grow your world.
You get to grow your world, and if you water your world properly, if you seed your world properly, and if you fill your garden with the right diversity of things, they all work together in this beautiful, harmonious way that makes it less work for you and gives you more yield.
Right.
I always use the example too. I don't know the exact truth of this. Somebody online can look it up. But Charles Darwin, right? What was his book called? It's not. Is it The Theory of Evolution?
Man, I had it for a second.
No, it's called something else. It's called
the diversification of species, or
something of species. Something of species. Yeah, the something of species. But anyway,
Punnett squares.
So the whole book, right? Everyone talks about natural selection being a motivating force in evolution, but natural selection is a very small part of that book. It's about 6 pages, if my internet sources are true. The rest of it's about the incredible harmony and symbiosis of nature, down to the fact that even anything decomposing is the process of it being eaten, right? Which means that like nothing goes to waste. What a phenomenal system by which nothing is getting wasted and everything is being recycled and regenerated and consumed, you could say, so that it could be exhumed. So it's very interesting.
Charles Darwin, actually, I think, was one of the first scientific people to touch upon the fact that Earth has a consciousness, and that it's not the way that humans have consciousness, like, you know, so we can sit all day and like try to figure out why tornadoes happen, right? And like study that, and that's like meteorology or whatever, but they happen and we have no control over when they happen. So that is like something that's bigger than you, and that is like that balance, and the earth constantly finding its balance, and that's actually what humans are constantly trying to do. So the sooner that you kind of acknowledge that everything that's in our immediate experience is trying to do that,
then you also realize you have friends.
And life is easy.
Balance.
It's easy because you get that everybody else is doing that. Not everybody else, everything else.
I would say reality itself.
Reality is doing
balance.
that. Yeah, we're doing that.
Yeah, it's interesting to talk about that so plainly, because I feel like most people that just doesn't click with.
Right.
I said earlier in that conversation while the Doodlecast was going on that it's my experience that reality is sentient. That in the same way, I agree and disagree so much with what you said about our consciousnesses being different, Maybe they're different manifestations,
right.
but the reason we could recognize that the earth is, or that reality could be sentient, is because we are.
Right.
And so we recognize what it means to be sentient. Like when you see a dog get sad because you take something where you'd yell at it or something, you're like, oh, I know what that's like. I know what it's like to get yelled at. And so you think, oh, that's a sentient thing. It's having an experience just like me. If you can expand that to reality itself, I think it's pretty clear. But not everybody would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's so important to the whole process of art and creation, too. And that's why I'm so happy to be in Denver, because after just coming from Santa Fe, I felt like, this is just my opinion, but Denver is a little more technological, a little more quite a bit more densely populated.
Right.
But I also think it changes the way that folks are approaching spirituality and consciousness, which there's tons of churches here that are exclusively studying that. You know, you've got divine science and the Unity Church, and so all these spiritualities that have broken away from what are called the old desert religions, right?
Right.
And into this new form of looking at metaphor and mythology. Do either of you subscribe to a religion or an ideology of the theological type?
I find the spiritual argument very convincing, and I feel like if you want to say I resonate with it, but that's, like I'm choosing to see my reality and everyone else's as choose your own adventure. So, if there is a God who spun that into being, then that's great, but, anytime you say the word religion, I'm like, well, that's your adventure.
Yeah.
So I might be doing things that are very religious, and I'm not choosing to label them as, or I don't have a label for it. But either way, let's choose my adventure. So I chose my adventure.
Your religion is adventure itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, anytime you attempt to put a label on things, visual or word, like God or whatever, like has a beard, is a male, isn't, like whatever, choose your own adventure. And so, maybe I guess my religion is to not put labels on things.
How about you?
Well, I kind of talk about this in my book, Mayflowers, but a series of life experiences have helped me accept that everyone is kind of right in what the way that they've processed their belief. Because like you said, like we're all doing it the same way. But I was raised in an all-black school that was focused in Islam as a child. And so that was kind of my scope. My grandfather is a very Catholic person. My mom is a priestess of Oya in the Yoruba tradition of Ifa.
That is a wide smattering of cultures.
It's everything. And I wrote about this experience, but I had the privilege of studying Japanese culture for a couple of years, and that's greatly impacted my life and the way that I think of things. And so I would say Buddhism has had a huge influence on my movement in this world and the way that I interact with people. But I say all of that to say that for me, God is just that which is larger than me. Like things that, and not even just like physical things like the mountain, like especially in Colorado, we're like, yeah, I go to nature and nature is my God. And that's like a beautiful thing. And that's definitely something that I resonate with. I think moments that I could not explain other than the fact that they've been divine, and not divine like in a God way, but they've been good for me, or in sustaining relationships with friends, or just things that happen in life that feel good that I was not personally responsible for. That to me is like what keeps me going in life and gives me the sense of having like a belief that life is good and gonna be okay, and that I think is what we do with God. That's how we have posited God in this world, is like, this is what gives us meaning, this is whatever, like you said.
But it's all the things beyond our control, and all the things dancing with us. Right,
with us too. That's like the most important thing.
Yeah, it's a partnership.
Because even the things that are against us are with us. like what you said about a path or a journey or an adventure. I'm sure hundreds of times you've been, literally hundreds of times, even in your adolescent life, even in your childhood life, you have experienced things that were bad or felt bad, but turned out good in some way, or that experience.
Well, back to the nature, right?
You.
Like when something dies,
right?
It's nothing
necessary.
It's necessary, and it leads to more life and more growth. There's no way to avoid that.
Right.
Everything is a stepping stone on a much larger cobblestone path.
Something that you said earlier, even about people that you resonate with, or people that you get along with, or even what I said about like the types of people that certain things just click for them. I think it does come from recognizing that the negative things in your life have not been negative, like,
and they're not here to kill you,
right? And that's I loved what I was inspired by Ibeji about is that they lost their sister when they were 11 to a brain aneurysm. She passed away, and her name was Yanira, and there's a song on the album for that. And then their father was the great Anga Diaz, who played congas for Buena Vista Social Club and things like that, and he passed away as well. And you listen to the album and you are experiencing something that's almost creepy because it's not how you're taught to process emotions, you know? And so we have the power right now to create things that help us deal with reality. Yeah. And that is what we have to, like,
that's what good art is, right? Good art is an experience you take part in and then walk away from thinking like, I'm going to apply that to my fucking life.
Yeah, my whole life.
My whole life, I'm going to change the way I look at things and see things. This is kind of a silly time to say it, but I'm wearing a Ghost in the Shell shirt, if you're looking online.
Love it.
Yeah, but I don't like the movie. So anyway, but I love anime and I love all forms of media. And I don't think I've actually told this to either of you individually, but here we go. I believe that you can use art as a way to interface directly with God.
We've had this conversation.
I have, yeah.
Yeah, but I love it.
Yeah, so I think I just think it fits right now. So if I sit down, I think the intention is important, but I like to sit down usually at the end of a day, and watch a series or an anime series or something like that. And I really meditate first, and I sort of take a moment and I say, all right, what I'm about to do is not pure entertainment. What I'm about to do is listen to a story that knows I'm listening to it.
Right.
And it's going to give me the stories that I need to apply in my life. So here's a sort of silly example. I was watching the new Dragon Ball series, and I was kind of like, I had like a little tiff with John Shockness, who's a great friend of mine. I love him to death, right? And there was this episode about like Goku and Vegeta, who are the two main characters in Dragon Ball, and how like they're so different and they disagree about everything, but that's like what makes them good partners, and how they have to forgive each other and love each other, all this shit, right? But it came at like the perfect time when I had opened myself up and said, all right, what story do I need to learn today? And it is the most psychedelic experience you will ever have, I swear, which is just to sit there and let God tell you a story.
Right.
And just listen. And you'll come away with all these insights. That's my opinion.
Well, and it's real because when you think about it, someone created that from their concept of God.
Exactly.
Especially if that's the intention behind it. And I think I really, really heavily relate to all that you're saying. I found that for sure. I think all of us kind of in some way found this with Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
And Aang and Katara and Sokka and all of them, all the homies. But it's actually that someone decided to create something that was relevant to them in their cultural positioning in the world, and how they were able to create art out of that, and then also project like their philosophy. And they're teaching you with your eyes and your heart and your investment in their story, like how to be as a person, right? The solar eclipse is coming, guys. So that's like a huge thing in Avatar for beating the Fire Nation, right? So we had to actually just think about the intention that people are putting into the things that they're creating. And if it's a good intention, then you want to consume that. Just like food. If your food is grown well, you want to eat that. If it's been beaten and stabbed multiple times, it doesn't feed you.
Yeah, it doesn't taste good either.
How can something that has experienced Great Depression or experienced horrible things feed you and make you better?
It can, I think. It just isn't going to taste good.
Well, it's not going to be good.
Your pleasure of it is, or your experience of it's not going to be as pleasurable. But it still could be good. Like, for instance, like, shit is not very nutritious in terms of eating it, but it can grow really nutritious food.
Right.
So it's all about whether you're composting and, again, in harmony with the way that the world works. Yeah. Well, that's gorgeous and beautiful. Sakile, tell us where can we find your book? Where can we find your music?
Yes, so I have a website called sakileoshun.com. That's SAKILEOXUM as in Mary, .com. And then I'm on Facebook as Sakile Lowman. And Instagram is Sakile Oshun, Twitter as Sakile Oshun, everywhere.
Nice. And what are people going to find? Are they going to find?
I just post a lot right now, especially. I think it started when I realized that I actually have some answers to some things. And that's actually where we had to be as people right now, because we're seeing that there are people who have solutions isn't the word because it's not a solution, but
they've got a certain kind of experience.
Well, they have experiences, but they're projecting them on people. Like we see that with our current presidency. We see that with school and the way that the school system works and the way that the collegiate system works is that there are actually rules in place that aren't beneficial to our creative growth. And we as individuals right now have to decide, okay, I actually have a real solution for that. Let's fund art projects for everyone because every single person on the planet will benefit from good people creating art.
That's a good idea. We should do that.
Yeah.
We're doing our best.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good feeling too, I'll tell you on the other end.
But the other thing too is that it's not just that it's a good idea, it's that it's
instrumental.
It's instrumental. It's so important. It's necessary, and it's like right.
Yeah.
For right now, that's what's right. Like I think so much. You know, we're like the participation ribbon culture, right? Like we do that thing where we're like everyone's opinion is valuable, and that's great. But what ends up happening is that nobody's opinion, like. Okay, so we say everyone's opinion is valuable, but the way that media projects opinions on you, there's a prevalence of a specific narrative. Yep. And there are narratives that go unheard. And so when we're saying everyone's opinion is valuable, we're not actually...
What you're really saying is no one's opinion is valuable.
Right. We're saying no one's important.
It makes me think of that one line in The Incredibles. You guys know, everyone's seen The Incredibles,
everyone's
right?
super.
Yeah, he's like, and what does she tell? She tells her kid, she's like, everyone's special. Like, you're just special in a different way. And he goes, that's just like saying no one is special.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't really know what to say to that. I guess that's kind of true.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is.
And Syndrome says that. Do you remember when Syndrome says, he says, I'm going to make everyone super because when everyone is super, no one will be.
Yeah.
And that's actually kind of cool. That's like a cool...
Yeah, it's like the opposite of what the kid was mentioning at the beginning.
Yeah.
Going back to cartoons,
kind of cool.
That reminds me of, I think it was, what was the one with the spin-off from the Ducks, the superhero with the one wheel?
Oh my God, what?
Come on.
I think total, we both are a little...
Ducks in a wheel.
There's
Disney,
a 10-year gap.
So Scrooge the Duck had 3 nephews, right? Launchpad McQuack was the guy who always failed to land.
Not familiar with this canon.
Well, that's true.
I know Scrooge McDuck.
Yeah. Anyway, but he had the whole vault full of coins, and he would swim through it like classic. But there was a spin-off where Launchpad was also the pilot for like this accountant who had this weird like genius streak and stumbled across a super suit, which was just like a robotic suit with one wheel, and it could do everything like flying and all this stuff.
I do not remember this at all.
I remember this.
But there was an episode, and it might not have been that cartoon, but that's where my head went. But a super character got thrown onto a planet full of like way more super characters, and there he was like the only normal human thing. Even though he was like pretty superpowered, he was nothing compared to where he was. He was the only normal, and all of the superheroes were craving a savior, a damsel in distress, that they caused more problems trying to save him from thing. You know, they were like, oh my God, stop that car, and you know, it was like a crazy thing. But that's where my head went, of just this person being thrown into a situation where they're like just like the complete outsider. You know, where you have the other one like Superman, complete outsider, but on the opposite end of the spectrum, the only powerful one. You know, where what if you're the only non-powerful one?
Well, it's just showing that anything outside of any mutagen, right, anything that's moving outside of the norm, good, bad, left, right, up, down, is going to affect the context, or the context, the contrast of the whole system, which is complicated phrasing, but all it really means is that's why art's good, is that we have different experiences, and we're all the main character, the superhero of our own world, living in a world full of people that aren't our kind of superhero. So yeah, that's all happening. Well,
because what you said, the norm is just artificial. Because what's normal is like being sad, because every single human experience can relate to that, or being happy, or like the emotional thing, or like even interacting with nature. That's like a thing that's like really universal, right? So like what's difficult is then when there's this medium, and we are in a time where we are incredibly affected, impacted by our mediums. Those are the things that tell you what is supposed to be normal.
Right, and they're one directional.
Right.
It's like, hey, you sitting there, this is what's normal. And I'm going to interrupt for a second, because we actually are almost out of time already.
Perfect.
It went pretty fast, right?
Yeah, perfect.
So that's why WeAreDenver exists. So this news platform, for those of you watching today, tomorrow, 55 years from now, 150 years from now, maybe you're aliens in the future looking back through what the hell humans were up to. We're doing this because I think folks are tired of being told what to do.
Yeah.
I think what they'd like is to see a bunch of different people with different opinions sit in a room and have a real conversation about it. So that it's not like, well, is that guy who's telling me that's right the right thing, or that guy who's telling me that's right the right thing? Right. Instead, those two dudes can sit down together and battle it out. And you, as sort of like an omnipotent third person, can decide what the hell you think yourself.
Right.
Rather than just agreeing with one of the stories that have already been given to you. You can see why that's bad for capitalism, though. Yeah,
we want to go out into the world and support the creative process, and then we want to come back in here and talk about it as a creative process.
Yeah.
I think, before we go, even just that is my focus. You asked, what's your art? What is your like thing, your platform, whatever. I founded this arts collective called the Universal Project, and that's exactly what the focus is actually getting a bunch of people on a stage talking. And that looks in a talking, performing, presenting their ideas, and everything, and allowing the audience and the people who have the privilege of being present to just absorb that and allow that to impact them and allow that to be them. And also, just for your visual sake and for the way that you interact with society, for those people to look different than you and have a diverse array of knowledge coming from different people.
That's so important.
So important.
If folks want to learn about that Universal Project, if they want to learn about your music, if they want to buy your books, tell us again, how can they find you?
Find me on Facebook, Sakile, Sakile, Oshun, Oxum, and then Lowman, Lowman. And you could just Google that, and I'll be there.
Good. It's nice to just be there.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, plugs all around. We got Meet in the Street going on again this weekend for another 5 weekends. If you don't know, WeAreDenver isn't just a platform for podcasting. It's also a platform for events and artists to go up and get paid what they do, hopefully properly. That's the goal.
Right.
And move forward with sharing our voices and our different experiences and perspectives. So thank you so much for being with us. What other stuff should we plug? Meet in the Street's happening. Check out the new website, www.wearedenver.org. It's not perfect, but it's moving forward.
Yeah. New logo popping soon.
New logo is popping soon. I really like it. Ryan Fu has a new website. Update 4.7 just came out, and one of the patches that came with it was the update for the website. You can find out all about who Ryan Fu is at www.ryanfu.org. I'm trying to secure the domain ryan.fu, but it's more difficult than I thought it was going to be, and quite a bit more expensive. So for now, check it out at ryanfu.org. Otherwise, thank you so much for being with us, Sakile.
Word.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Have me back. This is fun.
Yeah, we got to just kick it and have conversations about art and Denver. And if you're going to say anything about Denver, good or bad, right now, say it.
It's great.
It's great.
It's the best place.
It is so cool.
Yeah, but don't come here. Everyone already did. Everyone already did. So if you're like looking at the web right now trying to figure out what Denver's all about and like why you should move here, don't. That's that easy.
Yeah,
everyone already did. They beat you to it, bro. I'm sorry.
It's already too cool.
Especially
you
if you're looking at the web and trying to figure it out, because that's where you made the mistake.
Yeah.
Because that's a very specific type of audience they're looking for on the internet. But, you know, if you're like a dope creative and you're like looking to get your art, we have such a community of people who will appreciate what you're doing.
Yep. And people who are building platforms to
constantly building platforms. That's why this place is so important. That's why we love it here.
I love it here.
And it's beautiful.
It is beautiful. You get beautiful sunsets, gorgeous weather, all kinds of wonderful stuff. Well, I've been very honored to sit down with both of you. Once again, I'm Ryan Fu. This is Steven Sampson.
Goodbye.
And Sakile Lowman.
Adios.
And we are Denver, and it's been great to talk to you both and to you. I hope you guys all have a good day. This has been Illfoominati on the We Are Denver network. Check us out this Saturday and various other weekends for Meet in the Street. Love and peace. Bye-bye.